The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star.
All right. Well, happy Monday, everyone. I know it doesn't seem that way, but we're about to turn that around for y'all. I am joined by the one and only Christy Scales and, of course, Aisha Morrison. Ladies, I know after a loss, it can be a little tough. We were spoiled with a month full of Victory Mondays. A little bit of a down energy today. However, still a very positive outlook going forward. So I just want to emphasize that. How are we feeling to start things off after what we saw in Sunday Night Football? Aisha, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll jump to Christy.
I think I'm in an in-between place with some of the things that we saw in the game. I still haven't gotten to dive deep into the all-22, but I think there's some good things you can take from that game and some not so good things we can take from that game that we'll get into later. But overall, I feel like there's some things to build upon moving forward, and I'm not gonna just stay all in my feelings about it. How do you feel, Christy?
Well, I think when you look at the macro, right,
Tracking.
to go 4-1 without Dak in this stretch and against some good teams. So it's certainly a positive. Of course, no one would have expected that the Giants would have jumped you in the NFC East standings. So we'll see if they can sustain that. But I have to admit, ladies, that I knew it was going to be a very rough outing in Philly, like 4.5 hours before kickoff.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it started as before we board the buses to head to the stadium. We're at the team hotel, and one of the things, there's a little security thing that you do before you get on the buses, and so there's a K-9 unit. And so before you get on the buses, you're still inside this team hotel, and you put your baggage out. And Chris Beam was there, so he witnessed this as well. But we've got our bags out, and the dog that is sniffing the bags whizzes on team photographer James Bone Crusher Smith's bags.
Stop.
And it's like, welcome to Philly.
Even the dogs in Philly have a vendetta with Dallas.
Yeah,
my goodness.
they obviously are Eagles fans.
Wow.
And so I thought, wow, okay, that's
a way to start.
Yeah, that's a way to
Interesting.
start. And so then it's very common that when you walk just across the sidewalk from the exit to the team hotel just to get on the team buses, literally across the sidewalk, there'll be fans, kind of near there. They put little barricades or rope lines up for security. But there are always Cowboy fans wherever we go, and they cheer the players and coaches as they're getting on the team buses. Well, this time it was mostly Eagles fans. And so they're already chanting E-A-G-L-E-S and booing the coaches and players, not just the coaches and players as they get on the bus, but they booed Scott Golnick from Cowboys PR.
What does Scott
Scott's
do to
just
them?
minding his own business.
Scott
wearing a suit and
can't
tie, looking nice. Jim Maurer, our head athletic trainer, looking very dapper in his suit and
They
tie.
said you can get it too.
Yeah. And I'm
Philly.
like, whoa, they are really into it. And of course, it was a party in downtown Philly the night before because the Phillies had closed out the National League, the NLDS. They had won the game earlier on Saturday afternoon. So it was all red for Phillies downtown on Saturday night, and then Sunday afternoon everything is green. And I thought, oh man, we hadn't even gotten on the bus yet, and we're already catching all this grief. So,
Oh, man.
and then, so we get to the stadium, and there are always like some celebrities or local sports heroes on the sideline.
Sure.
So Joel Embiid from the 76ers, he's this one of the great NBA stars. And so he's down there, and I'm like, hey, you want to jump on Cowboys radio and talk to some Cowboys fans? And he's like, I don't know that I really should. I don't want to catch the wrath of the Philly fans, So he's a smart guy. He knows where his bread is buttered. So he didn't come on, but he was very polite, and we were joking and talking. But he's like, I don't think I want to go on air. And then First Lady of the United States, Dr. Jill Biden, was there last night, and she's a lifelong Eagles fan. She spent part of her youth in one of the suburbs of Philadelphia, and there she is on the field before the game singing "Fly Eagles Fly," and every time they show her, boo. I mean, getting rained down.
Getting into it.
It's like she's one of y'all, you know. So it's like it hadn't
They ain't got no
it hadn't
loyalty
even
out
kicked
there.
off, and it was on.
And I was going to ask you, what was the energy like? I mean, how was the fan
Fantastic.
base? Because I know when we were in the locker room and just all week leading up to it, it was like, hey, rookies, are y'all ready for this? Or are you ready? I mean, are they going to throw things? Are we going to see more eggs being thrown at the bus this season? Like,
yeah,
what to
we
expect?
didn't get egged
Oh,
on
that's
the way
good.
in. and
Why
so
you seem disappointed?
I was kind of disappointed. I will admit it. I love the vitriol,
There you
know,
go.
because
Yeah.
in Philly's one of my favorite places, just because they let you have it. You know exactly where you stand, and that's from the canine unit before you get on the bus. So, but they made up for their lack of egging with their, being loud and
Sure.
Actually, what was really funny was it's the middle. Was it the middle of the second quarter or middle of the third quarter? And the Eagles are on offense, and they're just about to get into the red zone, and and they break the huddle. They're coming to the line of scrimmage. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, they're telling the Eagles fans to be quiet. On offense, you're supposed to be quiet,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But the rousing chants of Dallas
Oh.
Yeah. Well,
SU,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
going. And it was so loud that the offense had to ask the crowd to quiet down.
That's-
That's what it was like last night.
Look, I'll give Philly fans that. They are loyal to their team for whatever reason they are, but they are still very loyal. And so I wanted to ask you, being in that environment, did you feel a major, massive difference in the crowd energy from the first half to the second half? Was there a big drop in energy for the Eagles fans? And how many Cowboys fans ratio do you think there was to Eagles fans there?
maybe 10%. That'd be
Dang.
kind of high.
Wow.
Yeah. Instead of like over 60% in LA,
Wow.
probably closer to 70%. There were a lot of Cowboy fans, but they were small pockets, and they were definitely overwhelmed by the Eagles fans.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it was quiet in the third quarter because that's when the Cowboys started their rally. But when the Eagles they had two sustained drives, one in the first half
beginning
and
and
one
the
in the
last.
second
Oh
half.
my gosh,
Over
yeah.
7.5 minutes. What was the second one? One was 15 plays, one was 13 plays.
Yeah.
But that's
It's like 8
that
minutes.
was the Eagles' answer. That was the one that really turned the tide there in the second half. But yes, for about maybe 20 minutes, it was blissfully quiet because that's the greatest joy. In fact, I was talking to Danny White, the former Cowboys quarterback, and
Sure.
he broadcasts games for Compass Media. So we were talking on the sideline before the game, and he always hated playing in Philadelphia. But he says, the greatest satisfaction you could ever have as a Dallas Cowboy is to go into Philly and quiet the crowd. So they had that for most of the third quarter, but unfortunately, Philly took the game back in hand in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
Sure.
and it's interesting. You talk about that the long sustaining drives. The only two long sustaining drives that the Eagles had came at the beginning of the game and the very end of the game. I know a lot of people are kind of down on what the defense was able to do, against them in those drives. A lot of people expected for the defense to get those guys off the field or have those capabilities. I feel like you look at time of possession. I think that has a lot to do with the defensive output at the end of the game. I think at the beginning of, in the first half, I think the Eagles threw some things at the Cowboys that, are unique to them in a way that they hadn't seen schematically. And I felt like it took the defense a while to kind of get things figured out. What they did with Micah was actually how they targeted Micah was impressive to me. We talked about how much the RPO means for their offense and how they play off of it. But I felt like it was so, to them specifically, I think their offensive line played well as well. Got to give them credit there. But the way that they played the RPO and made Micah have to come up, and it really put him in a place. I don't know if you guys saw his post-game interview, but definitely the most down I've seen him on himself and, as a player. And last week, we got to shadow Christy. It was fantastic.
She's amazing.
And walking through this building, I don't, obviously you guys don't know, but resilience is something that is echoed through this building a lot. And so for me to actually see it on display to some degree yesterday with, being down 20-0 in that building to that team and to come back and fight back, I thought meant a lot to this team. But also, too, when you talk about this defense and what they're trying to be and, Micah being the star of this defense, one of these stars, but the prime star of this defense, I think it was important for him to get this teach tape. I think it was important for him to feel that, to feel like, man, like he feels, I think he feels invincible, and I know he plays as though he's invincible, but this is one of the instances where a matchup really put him in a place to where he couldn't dominate the way he wanted to, and I expect for him to respond to that well. Yeah, absolutely. So I just felt like I wanted to mention that I felt like the defense did what they could. I think that Philly started 3 of their scoring. Well, they got points in the second quarter off of, I think they started at the 46 was the furthest away that they, like the Dallas 46. So they started in Dallas territory multiple times. I think that offensively they weren't put in the best positions, and they stood up how they could. They held them to field goals a couple times in the middle of that game, but yeah.
I wanted to take a quick rundown of the stats, because when you look at them, this really does not tell the entire story.
Absolutely.
Again, we've been on the theme of how stats don't always tell you the entire story of what happened in the game. And so just quick rundown of the stats. Total yards for the Cowboys during this game, 315. For the Eagles, 268. Passing yards for the Cowboys, 181. Passing yards for the Eagles, 132. The Cowboys had 134 rushing yards. The Eagles had 136. I thought that was very interesting.
Yes.
Yards per play, the Cowboys had 4.9. The Eagles had 3.9. Now, we're keep scrolling down. Penalties. I know we will get into this a little bit later. The Cowboys had 10 penalties for 72 yards. The Eagles had 2 for 10 yards. And then time of possession. We've talked about this really in earlier weeks, how that time of possession ends up being key. The Cowboys had the ball for 25 minutes and 30 seconds. The Eagles had the ball for 34 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Ouch. But I think this was a game that will make them resilient. I woke up this morning not too down, and it took me a little bit last night to let it sink in, really watch things back this morning. Because like Aisha said, resilience is plastered all over the walls here. It's something that we hear after really every game. You hear it multiple times from players, from coaches. And I think with resilience, there comes a little bit of a setback. And surprisingly enough, the setback was not losing Dak like Cowboys fans. And a lot of us even thought, weeks ago when Cooper Rush came in, the sky was falling, the season's over, all the bad things. And then you look at what Cooper Rush has been able to do for this team these last few weeks. And I really, as somebody had commented the other day, they're tired of us saying, give him flowers. So we're going to have to come up with a new little phrase here. But I really give him all of the kudos for managing to keep this team afloat while Dak has been in his absence due to that injury. However, something that really got me was Nick Sirianni during his press conferences during the week earlier had said, we have more tape on Cooper Rush than ever before, and that really showed during this game. So definitely not Cooper's best game statistically. We saw that. And something interesting, too, I think, watching that post-game press conference, Christy, I don't know if you noticed this, being there, he showed a little bit more emotion. He looked a little bit more down, and obviously so. They lost, and that's not something any quarterback wants. But what I really enjoyed about those post-game press conferences and locker room interviews was that all of the guys still rallied behind Cooper Rush.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's important because it shows you the brotherhood.
Yeah.
That despite the loss, despite this not being his best game, he is part of this brotherhood. Whether anybody wants to give him credit for that or not, give him credit for what he's achieved and accomplished these last few weeks, despite people saying he wasn't going to, everybody thought this season was tanked and it was over. You go back to, we were talking about this before we started recording. Mm-hmm. If you bring back old sound from people talking about this team the week after the Bucs game is very different than the conversations now. So kudos to Cooper Rush. And Christy, I think it's important to note of all of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But I think that what last night showed is how different it is for a quarterback when you're having to play from behind.
Yeah.
Oh, tracking
right?
that.
Yeah,
yes, ma'am.
For sure. And the one thing that we've talked about the previous couple weeks is the teams in the NFL that win are the ones that avoid the mistakes, whether it's penalties or the turnover. So -3, just like Dak.
Yeah.
Just like Zeke and Cooper said last night, you can't 3 interceptions. You can't be -3
It's
and
not
expect to
normal.
win a game.
No.
And the other thing is, people going into the Eagles game were really focusing on Jalen Hurts and the addition of A.J. Brown and, what they do with their run game and the RPOs, but not enough credit was given to the Eagles defense. And so when you add a James Bradbury, when you add a Hassan Reddick, I mean, the Eagles have always had a tough front, but man, they made plays on the back end, Slay and Bradbury with a couple of good breakups, and then Gardner Robinson, he had the two interceptions, and then Slay had the third one. But if you're looking for some positives, the Cowboys did try and follow that formula that we've talked about over the past 3 weeks of sticking with the run, and sometimes it's butting your head into the wall.
Yeah.
Zeke ran so
Yo,
hard last night.
yes.
I was so excited
He ran
for that.
so hard.
Absolutely.
Every one of those yards was hard-earned. But what they didn't get were the plays down the field. It wasn't, setting up the play-action pass and getting some of the hits down the field. Or that they got the previous couple weeks.
Sure, and that was a perfect segue because we have plenty to still break down. Coming up in our second segment, we're going to talk all about the bad and what needs work, looking ahead, and we're going to throw out some positivity here. We're gonna talk all about the positives to take away from this game. Stay tuned. This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. Now, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
All right, welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, the all-women podcast of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes,
and
lady.
we are presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to get into the game a little bit more, but first, let's talk about single-game tickets. Limited tickets for the remaining home games of the 2022 Dallas Cowboys season at AT&T Stadium are available now. Visit DallasCowboys.com/tickets or SeatGeek.com, the official ticketing partner of AT&T Stadium. I'm so excited for another home game. I can't tell y'all
Yeah,
enough.
I'm ready. I'm excited.
So
about it, too.
excited. Okay, so we're staying on the topic of the good, the bad, and the needs work. We're not going to say ugly because
Oh, you can say ugly.
Well-
there was some ugly last
well,
night.
we're not
It's
going to say
okay.
ugly because
we got to be honest.
You know,
Yeah.
we're not Eagles fans here. So if we were talking about the Eagles, sure. But let's get into that because I wanted to start with the bad of the game, what needed work, and let's talk about some of the key plays that you all felt were the game changers. Some of the key aspects of this game that potentially could have been game changers when you look back in hindsight. So, Christy, I'm going to start with you. Aisha, we'll jump to you after that. But what is the first thing you're thinking of when it comes to game changer for this game for the Cowboys?
what McCarthy termed the discipline penalties, or should we say
They
lack of
hurt.
discipline
They
penalties?
hurt yesterday.
The Cowboys just shot themselves in the foot with some uncharacteristic penalties. So you're talking about, Aisha was talking about Micah, and I think that one at the end that he got for unsportsmanlike conduct where he was over Dallas Goedert, the Eagles tight end, I think that was just symbolic of the frustration from the day. And then when Trayvon late in the game slammed his helmet there in the end zone after that final Eagles touchdown, again, frustration. But as for individual plays, I would say probably the failed fourth down after CD was ruled just short on the third down catch and run. Is that the one that pops into your mind first?
So yeah, that one pops into my head, but I think that the getting the 3 at the half and not getting the 7, I think that Noah Brown, like, first of all, the effort by Noah Brown.
Yes.
This guy is a guy you go to in a time of need. He is not afraid. I like that about him. But I think if you get 7 there, it swings things for you. I felt like 3 was but if you come out, especially with the adjustments that it looked like, Dan Quinn made in the second half, the defense came out flying around, then maybe that conversation's different. Also, too, Cavante Turpin had a good return earlier in that game, and he got called back because of it was a Kelvin Joseph hold that I'm not sure it was a hold.
Yeah, that was very questionable.
Very questionable.
Call.
But I think that Cavante Turpin got you back a lot, like hitting yardage, I guess you want to say. He had 96 yards rather in this game, and that return I think could have shifted the tide as well.
Yeah. Well, but in to your point of that specific penalty on Kelvin Joseph with the hidden yards, that one was actually 32 yards on that.
Yeah.
So
Ooh.
let's
He
say
was flying.
So, I'm sorry, it was a third. Okay, so Cavante Turpin returns the punt 34 yards. Okay, so the Cowboys should have the ball in the third quarter at their own 39-yard line, but because of this penalty, by the time it's marked off, the Cowboys are at their own 7-yard line. So instead of the 39-yard line, they're at their own 7. So that's 32 hidden yards.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, when Bill Parcells, the Hall of Fame coach, was with the Cowboys, he would talk all the time about hidden yardage, and he would equate 100 hidden yards to 6 points. Basically, 100 hidden yards equals a touchdown in a game. So if you do that, that's just a couple points right there.
Yeah.
That one particular thing. And the other thing is the 10 penalties, yes, that's a lot. But, in the first half at one point they only had 2 penalties. But when Fowler's jumping off sides and given early in the game, and it's
on a fourth down.
On a fourth down, when the clock is about to run out at the end of the first quarter, and instead of the Eagles settling for a field goal, it gives them 1st and goal at the 5-yard line, and the very next play, Miles runs it in for the touchdown.
Yeah.
So, you can't just say, oh, it's 5 yards. I mean, it was so much more. It was just, it's the timing and it's the quality, not the quantity of these penalties. That's important.
I'm glad you mentioned the Dante Feller penalty, because that's something I had on my notes here was, you're in a fourth down situation. Don't give them the easy first down. That is such a game changer, really, for any game, but especially the position the Cowboys were in at that point. And to your point, back to Cavante Turpin, we'll talk about positives in a little while, but I was excited to see what he was going to bring this game, because he had mentioned to me of playing outside and being able to be in an outdoor stadium and how he felt like this was the game to prove himself and show everybody. I think he did an absolutely great job. However, you go back to that great run of his and Kelvin Joseph, they tripped up on each other. So just I think the spatial awareness from Kelvin Joseph was off and could have potentially blocked, 1, better field position, or 2, I expected Cavante to take it all the way during that run. I was fully on that Cavante Turpin hype train that he was going to take it home this week. So that's just kind of another silly mistake, going into that. Something else that I had, too, was, I'm glad you mentioned it, the Micah unsportsmanlike penalty and then the Diggs. That's it.
I went back and looked at that. I was asking Matt Owen, what he thought caused that, because we've seen Trayvon Diggs, like, he's a quiet, calm, he's a competitor, but I've never seen him behave that way. I've never seen him get that angry before. And I went back to see, I think he knew the play, from my understanding. It seemed like they did that play before, and he was trying to communicate. It was just loud in there. He was trying to communicate. Communication didn't flow down. And so I think that's where a lot of his frustration came from. Not justifying it, but just explaining.
I think, well, like I was going to say, I can't get mad at these guys for being passionate. I would be upset if they weren't passionate in this game. However, be passionate in the right way, guys. Don't cost your team costly penalties at the worst time of the game. I mean, there was little pulses for the Cowboys during both of these two times that were taken away because of those penalties. So I'm all for passion. I'm all for being frustrated, you know, and especially in football, you're going to see smack talk. Like, you're always going to see that. But I just think for both of those players, it was very out of character to get flagged on them. So I just thought that was interesting. But something else I wanted to mention, too, was Leighton Vander Esch and the fourth down stops. The diving over the top of the pile. That was driving me insane. Christy, we were at Texas Live yesterday watching the game, and it was actually really funny because Aisha was, like, going crazy. She's being Aisha, and I'm sitting there taking notes. I'm like, okay, so he dove over the first time.
Yeah, the problem is the guy wasn't up top. He was going, he was submarining.
Dove over the first time. I was like, all right, I'm going to ignore that.
Mad.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to ignore that. The second time I was like, oh my goodness, I can't ignore that. Now I have to write it down. I have to make note of it.
Well, yeah, but the thing is you have to sell out, right?
Yeah.
So you're making that decision as it's, you know.
And it's a timing thing, too, which is why I wanted to ask you about that.
You've got it, you know, it's like, okay, and that's your role. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
But when they slip underneath you, but you've got to give that Eagles offensive line credit. They obviously are the toughest O-line that the Cowboys have faced this year. And
it was a battle.
As great as the Cowboys front seven has been, let's face it, they have played up until the Philly game offensive lines that were decimated by injury. I'm not taking anything away from the Cowboys defense. I'm just stating facts.
Sure.
And so it was great timing for the Eagles because they had been facing injury problems on the O-line, but they got Mailata back, their left tackle. They got their guard back.
I think Kelsey went down during the game, though. He had the concussion. He went out, right?
No, actually, the guard went out.
So
Kelsey stayed. The guard that went out, Dickerson had to come in.
Yes.
I'm sorry, it was the right tackle, Lane Johnson, that went out.
My bad,
It was Lane Johnson. That was so he didn't play the second half, and he is fantastic. He's all pro. Lane Johnson, one of the great offensive linemen in the NFL, and so losing him. You know, that's one of the reasons why it took them a little while, I think, the Eagles' offense in the second half, you know, having to overcome missing a great offensive lineman.
Yeah, and I definitely felt like the Eagles' offensive line had success in different spots against the Cowboys, but just going back and looking at this game, again, the same thing I said with Mike, I think is going to be the same for the whole defense, is this is going to be good teach tape for them. Because a lot of what Philly does is getting you looking a different way than where you need to be. It causes you, because a lot of their offense, especially yesterday with the run, is contingent on how they run the RPO. It makes defenses have to, when you talk about a Cowboys defense, they're aggressive, right? They talk about playing fast. They're decisive. They were not decisive yesterday. You could see in certain spots, obviously they cleaned it up in the second half, but the missed tackles, the gap integrity. Yeah. Like there were opposite of Tank, like containing on the edge is something that's been a problem as well. It's just, I think these guys, I felt like they second guessed themselves a lot last night, and I think that's why. But that's also why we're going to talk about the positives. Why I'm excited, because I think this is a unique opportunity for Dan Quinn as well to look at this defense and say, this is a problem. This is something that you like. A mobile quarterback to this degree, even though he didn't do a whole bunch yesterday, it's just the threat of him being able to pass the ball or just hand the ball off or run. I think this teach tape is going to be good for this defense because you could see them in the second half once they understood what was going on. They were a lot more decisive. They were a lot more quicker, filling in their gaps, communicating better. But man, listen, it was in and out, looking like guys trying to decide, do I like, and also too, I mean, credit to his offensive line, the Eagles' offensive line. They got up on these defensive players, got upfield and things like that. But it was a battle in those trenches in certain spots. it was back and forth. I think the Cowboys definitely had their moments. The Cowboys' offensive line had their moments as well, where they were dominant in spots too. So,
and I'm glad you brought up the opportunity for coaches to look back at this and learn. I think Mike McCarthy that's one of his strong points as a coach is he is going to look back at this and he is going to learn. Something that was questioned too that I don't necessarily think we mentioned yet was Mike McCarthy's choice to not challenge the spot of the ball. From the TV, Christy, I don't know, you were there. Maybe you had a different view. From the TV angle, it was clearly a first down, and the spot of the ball just was not placed correctly. So I think a lot of question was, why not throw the challenge flag on that? And Mike McCarthy actually talked about this in his post-game press conference. So let's take a listen to what he had to say.
My experience has been when I'm communicated with by the official, I'm usually discouraged from challenging that play. And then when we had plenty of time to see their defense, which we were expecting man, and they were in man. And so that's actually why I stayed with the call that I did. Obviously, it didn't work out and put our defense in terrible field position.
Yeah, so personally, I'm looking back at this game, and it's a woulda, coulda, shoulda situation. I think Mike McCarthy should have thrown that challenge flag. I don't know if officiating would have overturned it at that point. Maybe there's something with that, but it looked like a first down ball. Yeah. So I don't know what your stance on
when
that is.
Coach McCarthy referred to communicating with the official, so that's the down judge. The down judge and the line judge are on opposite sidelines, and it just so happened that by the way, the guys and gals, because it was actually the female down judge, Robin De Lorenzo.
Yeah, I saw her.
Anyway, she's the third female full-time official in the NFL, so she's a rookie this year. My buddy Alan, he's the umpire on John Hussey's crew, and so I was talking with Alan before the game. I said, "Hey, I want to meet Robin, and how's she doing?" He's like, "Oh man, she's doing great." But anyway, so it was the down judge who was right next to McCarthy, and so he's referring to talking to her, and she said, "I had his knee down before he reached the ball out to where it would be a first down." So when he says, in my experience, when they say that, it's going to be tough to overturn. So that's what he's referring to on that. In hindsight, sure, of course they should have challenged. But the other thing is he said that they were in turbo when they're kind of in that hurry up and get up to the line of scrimmage and try and get the play off. And sometimes it's not hurrying up to get the play off. You're hurrying up to the line, and that way the defense is not able to make the substitutions that they would normally make. But they hurried up. They knew, you go into a game, if we're in a 4th and short, this is going to be our go-to play. They thought they had the matchup. They did. It was man on man. But I tell you who blew up what happened on that play. So CeeDee Lamb starts left, and he goes in motion to the right. The ball is snapped, and Noah Brown is kind of right off the edge. And Hassan Reddick, number 7, excellent defensive player for the Eagles, comes in between, gets by Noah, and is heading towards Cooper Rush. And as Noah is turning and Reddick goes by, Noah and CeeDee collide.
Yeah.
And CeeDee was not able to get out on the route. So he's stuck in the, near the line of scrimmage. And meanwhile, Cooper's out there and he's having to throw the ball. I think it ended up being directed towards Jake Ferguson. Is that right?
I think it was 87. I think it was 87.
Yeah, I think it was to Ferguson.
It
was to Ferguson. But anyway, but CeeDee never got out on the route. So when you look at it, credit Reddick for making the play on that, because he totally blew it up. Because by getting that penetration and causing Noah, CeeDee, it was our 2 receivers. And one of them was staying in there to block.
Yeah.
And they collided, and CeeDee never got out on the route.
And that was also something that, I would also like to say about the, just the way that, the play calling was last night and just how things were. I felt like the first couple plays, I was like, okay, CeeDee. But the Cowboys have really struggled on 2nd and 3rd down. And it was weird yesterday because I felt like they kept getting into favorable.
Exactly.
It was 2nd and 1. You was like, oh, lit,
they can do this.
You're so right.
And then all of a sudden you're behind the sticks. And what I did see on film is what I was looking at is what they were doing is, like, obviously when it's just a 1 yard play, a lot of, defenses are expecting the run, so they're keying in on the middle. So what they were doing is doing like a quick boot, quick out or whatever into the flat, because that's typically going to be open because guys are, keying in on that. But what happened over the course of the game is that the Eagles defense, like you said Sirianni said, we know what's going on with Cooper Rush. We have tape on him. Yep. And we've talked about these quick out routes, things like that. Like, him delivering the ball there sideline to sideline is difficult for him for whatever reason. So I felt like those plays in itself were not, even though normally those may be favorable in those situations, they were not favorable to what this offense does well. And the Eagles defense definitely knew those things were coming. It just was so frustrating.
And Mike McCarthy talked about it in the press conference earlier last week when he said, how can we be efficient on third downs if we're not efficient on second downs? And
yes.
that was something that we had talked about last week. And so just another quick look at the stats. The Cowboys' third down efficiency, they were 4 of 10. The Eagles were 6 of 14. So
not that much better.
Really, nobody was doing great on third downs yesterday, if that makes you feel any better. And speaking of feeling better, we're going to come back and talk about all things positive, why as a Cowboys fan, you should just be excited to look forward to what's to come. We'll have all that and more here on Girls Talk Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. Now, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
With Smoothie King's original Angel Food and new Angel Food Slim without added sugar, you no longer have to choose between treating yourself and hitting your goals this summer. You don't have to choose between great taste and feeling great. Because at Smoothie King, every blend is made with whole fruits and no syrups, so you can satisfy your cravings without compromise. The only choice you will need to make is which one is best for you. Try our classic Angel Food or the new Angel Food Slim, blended without added sugar. Smoothie King, rule the day.
Welcome back to Girls Talk Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to get into the good of the Dallas Cowboys and Philadelphia Eagles game from the Cowboys, of course. But first, let's talk about NFL Plus. NFL Plus is here, which means no matter where you are, this is how you football. Get live, local, and primetime regular season and postseason games on your phone, tablet. You can replay games and even more. So head to plus.nfl.com and start your free trial of NFL Plus today.
And that is the greatest resource.
Look, I will be
watching.
trials.
I will be watching all of the Lions games this week on NFL Plus.
Getting
ready for Sunday.
And who doesn't love a free trial? We love free trials here. But you know what? Speaking of the Lions on Sunday, it's hard not to dwell on a loss, especially, like I said, we were spoiled of a month long of Victory Mondays. It's hard not to dwell on it a little bit. But we are here to help you move on. We're going to release all of that negative. We're going to talk about positives of this game because I think there was a lot of good positive things to actually note from what we saw from the Cowboys. A couple things I wanted to mention, game highlights that I had just as notes. Dorrance Armstrong had his 5th sack of the year so far, and I say so far because I'm expecting that number to continue to rise on up. We did see the Cowboys run game. I know you touched base on that earlier, Christy. That was great. More of that. More of that every single time. We'd love to see the Cowboys run game thriving. We'll talk about stats in a second. We did talk about Kevontae Turpin, Jake Ferguson. I know you're dying to talk about Fergie, Aisha. We'll get into that. And then Zeke. He had 81 rushing yards for this game, but he also broke another record, and he officially hit his milestone of 10,000 scrimmage yards. He is the third running. Oh, there we go. There's a little cheer. He's the third running back to do that, just behind Emmitt Smith and Tony Dorsett. So we love to see milestones being reached, especially for deserving players like Zeke. Zeke deserved it this game, and we love to see it. Also, something else that I mentioned last week about Zeke was that when it comes to him playing in the NFC East, statistically speaking, he has more yardage, rushing yardage, when he meets the Eagles. That still stands. We're still seeing an average rushing yard of 95.6 yards when he plays the Eagles, an average 77.1 of yardage when he plays Washington, and then let's see, New York, it was 81.8. That's just his average. So Zeke likes to eat when it comes to the Eagles, and I just had to throw that out there. But positives for y'all.
I would say Dak. I got to talk to him on the sideline after his early pregame throwing session. And you could see, he had some good velocity on the passes. Now, when I say that he's throwing to wide receivers. They don't have any defensive backs. This is before teammates come out to start the real part of pregame warm-ups. But talking to him, he said he felt like he had good velocity. Notably, he was taking snaps as well as from under center as well as shotgun. So that's important because being under, when you have a broken thumb and you're taking those snaps from the center directly, your hands are up, where, under the centers, what. Taking those snaps that can be painful on your thumb. But what he told me was, I feel like I'm at an A, but I want to be at an A+. I said, is your thumb sore after about 20, 25 minutes of throwing? He's like, no soreness. I said, do you think it's going to be sore tomorrow? He's like, I don't think so. I think it's going to be fine. He did have some of that tape on it, and I said, do you think you're going to be wearing that tape maybe the whole season or certainly for the foreseeable future? He says, I probably will. I don't know that I'll really need it, but at least for I'll probably have it for a while moving forward. Yeah, exactly. But what we were laughing about was, Mickey Spagnola and I, first we were standing together and Dak came up and I was teasing Dak. So I'm like, dude, you're getting more airtime in pregame warm-ups than you are during a normal game. And he says, yeah, that sky cam was over me when I walked out and it was over me the whole time. I know it was there. And I said, well, dude, do you know how many tweets and retweets and how many followers I could get if I just put, hey, Dak has his ankles taped? He did have one of his ankles taped, but he just laughed. And he said, you should do it. You should do it. But anyway.
Y'all are funny.
But he was very positive. And, of course, post-game, he did tell other media members in the locker room after the game that his plan is to play against the Lions. But, again, it's just going to depend on how it goes this week in practice and how he feels. So you don't have to force anything with it. But if I were a betting person right now, I would think that there's a really, really good shot that he plays Sunday against the Lions.
Well, luckily we talked about those single game tickets earlier because there you go, Cowboys Nation, pack up AT&T Stadium. Hopefully, we're not saying anything official, just hopefully it looks pretty promising for this weekend. Aisha, what are your positives out of the game?
So, I guess to add on to what you were saying, Christy, obviously I think Dak is a positive. I think some of these third downs that you need, or these, second and shorts and stuff like that you're not getting right now, I think you have a better chance of getting those with this guy on the field. I also think that he's returning to an offensive line, again, that is far better than what I think a lot of people expect it to be. I think they ran the ball well in a lot of different spots yesterday. They showed the ability to do that, but then also, too, when they do max protect, when they do have those young tight ends in there, they see some success there. And I think it's good for them to be gelling to some degree as he's returning from an injury like he had, So I think that's important. But honestly, another positive from the game, I think that the defense needed this, y'all. Like, I really seriously feel like this tape for both sides of the ball is going to be beneficial moving forward for this team. And yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, it's not a whole bunch.
But it's something.
They adjust. Like, I mean, honestly, too, the maturity of Kellen Moore to adjust in the second half and see what was going on and to correct that. Also, too, somebody brought it up to me. I didn't think about it because I was like, I wanted the in-game adjustments to be better in the second half. Like, I love that the second half they came out and adjusted, but defensively, you could tell that they were just like. That there was something that was wrong, right? And I never thought about the fact that the defense wasn't really having time to sit on the sideline and, going over stuff and sitting on the bench and figuring things out because they were on the field a lot.
Exactly.
I never thought about that until yesterday. So credit to them. I think that's a positive to see that they were able to come back and adjust.
And
in
the other
second
thing
half.
is, after giving up that second touchdown early in the second quarter, when they were put in really bad field position, and you referenced it earlier, Aisha, about how Philly had the ball in Dallas territory on a couple of those drives in the second quarter.
3 times.
To limit them to 2 field goals in those
Stout.
2 drives,
Absolutely.
that was stout. So
Also
it was not complimentary football yesterday.
Absolutely
The
not.
offense, the Cowboys' offense did not help
At
the
all.
Cowboys' defense.
And you showed in the last drive, last drive.
And again, special teams giveth and taketh away. You have the 62-yard return by Turpin, but then you also have the Kelvin Joseph penalty where they're back at their 7 instead of the 39. So good and bad, for sure.
All right, ladies. Well, it is always a pleasure. I am joined by Christy Scales and Aisha Morrison. I'm Justin Barrs. This has been another edition of Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Coming up next is Mike McCarthy's press conference, so we'll see you then.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!